I'm Victoria. I'm Vanessa. Yeah, it's okay if you can't tell us apart. I guess we would call it Twingineering. Yeah.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to our 9th episode of Twingineering. This episode, I don't know why I stuttered.
this show.
Today's episode, we're gonna talk about the interview process. Kind of like our process, what we went through, and some general maybe tips. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us. We're almost at number 10. So we've been going through this for a while now, and we're gonna keep it going.
We've been here for almost like 10 episodes.
Well then let's get started. So we'd like to start it with some weekly highs and lows just to get the convo going. Some weekly highs. I mentioned before that I started taking dance classes, and this time last week I made some friends. I kind of just started talking to people, so that was good. I kind of felt alone in those classes for a little bit, but it's only up from here, so yeah. What about you, Victoria?
Oh, I thought you were gonna say you're low.
Oh.
My high is that I also made friends, but at work, it's only taken me 5 months. But hey,
It'd be like that.
Yeah, so yeah, I was added to a group chat with other like people in their 20s. They're still older than me, like later 20s. But they're cool. I'm just glad that I can go to lunch with people, ask people questions. I don't work with them, like we're not on the same team, but that's a start. So they are engineers though, so you know.
That is a start.
Yeah.
Good. I guess we should have actually started with the lows. But my weekly low is that I was super tired this week. I don't really know why. I was just like having trouble sleeping, so then that kind of just threw my sleeping schedule off. And then just having to go to work and be energetic because I try to be. So it was a bit of a challenge, but yeah, we're just gonna try again next week.
Yeah, I felt that. But my low was that I spent too much money in April. So got my credit card bill, and I was not excited to see how much I had to pay back. So, but hey,
Yeah.
we had fun. But we're gonna
It's
tone
fine.
it down this month. We're gonna tone it down a little bit.
Money is temporary. Memories are forever. Just kidding. Do not take the financial advice if you're struggling.
Yeah.
Please budget yourself.
I know. Don't use your credit card on stuff that you can't afford.
Your credit card is not a gift card. Okay, moving on. So something new that we learned in our current role. For me, I mentioned, I think last time that I received, maybe I didn't, but like I received new parts that I'd be in charge of. And last week I was able to see, just kind of get experience on how they get put on an engine, where they go, what the attach points are. So it was good for like a visual perspective to see like, oh, this is where they get put on and that kind of stuff, especially on the line. Like at what point in the process of building it they get put on. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
That's cool because I don't know that still. So something I learned is, sorry, I'm reading my notes here. Oh yeah, so I am working with an EMI chamber. And that's been pretty cool, but in order to get it up and running, we still need to do some stuff. But anyways, that's besides the point. The engineer that I work with is kind of talking about like, he told me about some setup before you actually like start doing work in there. And so it was just kind of like 3 steps There's like ambient, like so we have to check stuff at ambient levels, system check, and continuity. So there's like different things that have to go, obviously, like in those like 3 steps, like the processes and like things to check and stuff, before we can start testing stuff with like antennas in the chamber. But yeah, this is all based on like the military standard and stuff. Like we look at that as a reference. But yeah, I did not know that before. So, you know, don't just go in there
Yeah,
and start testing
I
stuff.
still don't know that. It's also enough that like the weather's getting nicer out here. It's like, I mean, it's still a little bipolar, but like we're getting up there. It was like 70 degrees today.
Oh wow. Yeah, here
Yeah.
it's like also been bipolar. Like this week it was like really cold and then it was like partly cloudy and then it was like drizzling. I went on a walk this week and I was like, "Oh, it's the weather says cloudy." So I go walk and then like halfway through it starts drizzling and I was like, because I was halfway. So like obviously like either way I go, yeah, it was terrible. But good for you that
Yeah.
the weather is getting better.
Yeah, I sat outside yesterday and then like with people, and then they thought one guy was not afraid of spiders and there was a spider. And he was like, and I was like, with my napkin, you know, like, don't get this near me. I will throw hands with the spider. Anyways, boys. Moving on to this week's theme. um, the interview process. So this is pretty important. One thing we do want to talk about is like a process. Maybe give some information about how it went for us. For me, I only went through one interview process through one company because they were like one of the few that actually take it back to me. And I said yes to this interview. Um, and one common thing that I would say that a lot of I think people struggle with is like they go into an interview and obviously, you know, these people are evaluating you and you get kind of nervous because it's like you hold these people on like a pedestal, like you realize that they're like at a higher level, they work at the company. Um, and I want to say it's important to also know that even though they're evaluating you, you are also evaluating them and the company that they work for. You want to, you know, keep in mind that you want to make sure that this position is a good fit for you. Um, so don't be like, it is nerve wracking and it is scary. I don't want to like invalidate that because I was also really scared. But also make sure that you are selecting this company because it's a good fit for you. But yeah, I guess that's just like one tip that I would say. Um, do you want to add, Victoria?
Yeah, so I guess since we're going into advice and tips already, um,
Sorry.
that was on the last part of our list, but it's fine. Yeah, so I think one thing that I learned was to just like write things down as you're being interviewed. And it's okay to like take up time and just be like vocal about it. Like if they ask you a question and you like write it down, just be like, "Hi, like I'm just writing down the question." Um, and like one thing we were taught was like don't allow there to be like awkward like silence or space. Like even if, for example, they ask you to solve a question, at least for us, like solve a circuit, like what is this current value? Um, you can like be vocal about like the work that you're doing. And so I think that helps, like at least communicate to the interviewer that like you understand what you're doing or like how um your brain works. That's not what I'm trying to say.
Like how you're working it out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's really helpful because I think other than that, you have like smaller or not as many chances to be vocal about how you go about the process.
Yeah.
So I think that was like the main thing. Definitely write interviewers' names down. So you can reach back out after. You do want to send an email follow up after, like just saying thank you for your time. This is why, or like whatever, I enjoyed interviewing. This is why I think I'm a good candidate. Like, um, looking forward to hearing back from you soon. Something like that. So yeah.
I also think before you go into the interview process, if a recruiter does reach out to you and you do have like a point of contact before your interview, um, it's it's a good thing to, possibly ask what kind of interview it'll be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if like I don't think they'll give you like what questions they're gonna ask you, but you can say like if it's more like technical or like behavioral, like it's okay to ask those questions and they should be willing to let you know at least like what you should expect in that interview. Um, and then, also have some questions prepared beforehand. Because at the end they're gonna ask you like what question like do you have any questions? And you should have some questions for them. It can be about the company, about the work environment, the specific interviewer, like what their experience is like. Do they like their position? Do they like their work environment, their job? You can ask about like if there's any mentorship as well. It's good to have like well-rounded questions as well. And also be engaged with the people who are interviewing you. Um, if you do need to take a note, it you can ask as well, like if you feel more comfortable about like, oh, is it fine if I take notes during the interview, just so that they're aware that you are taking notes during the interview and it's not like you are like ignoring them or like doing something else. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to make it seem like that. Um, yeah,
Don't be scared to like ask for clarification either. Like you do want to answer the question, like don't want to go off topic. So feel free to do that. And then also like another question like you can ask is like about yourself. Like um you can ask the interviewers like, are there any like, do you have any doubts about me as a candidate like after this interview? Like, and I know that might be scary. And I struggled to ask that one the first couple interviews because I was like, ooh, I don't want to know. But like it's good to know. And then that way you can address their concerns at the interview. Or, if you don't have time, like you can address it in email or like maybe they want you back and then you can address it then. You know what I mean? So, and just it's a
yeah,
way for you to improve. Like even if they say like, oh, unfortunately, we're not going to move forward. Like, well, now you know that for your next interviews to address that. And I think it's better to know earlier than later. Yeah.
yeah, and like even after, like if they email you back saying like, oh, like no, sorry, I didn't know how to say that, but yeah, you can ask them like, oh, like thank you for your time. If you can also ask them about what you could have done to improve your yourself, like in the interview, or like what was the reasoning behind their selection and their choice. So don't be afraid to ask that either.
Yeah.
And also just keep like good communication with the company. Like maybe even though you didn't get that position, maybe you'll want to go back for like a different one. And it's good to keep um, a good like communication and connection with that company. I don't know if that's what I want to say, but
Relationship?
um, yeah, relationship. It's good. Keep good relationships.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And sometimes they'll tell you like what to study. So like it's not gonna be like every time. They're just gonna be like, hi, interview. But I mean that's what we're here to talk about today a little bit in case
yeah,
they are like, hi, we want to schedule a 30-minute interview. Please select the day that works for you. And then you're like, what do I do with this? That's how I was. I was like, what, you know?
yeah.
So, um, yeah, if we have any more advice and tips, I guess we can say them like as we go on. But I guess we can just go right into it. So just a general idea, at least for engineering, and at least for like electrical engineering, well, at least I did, had to go through different interviews. Most were like at least 2 to 3 rounds. And the first one is always like shorter than the other one or two, or more. And it's usually about like 30 minutes. Maybe they're like a little bit shorter. But they're mostly to introduce yourself, learn more about the company, talk about your experience, and the chance to ask questions. I think that's pretty, and like what the job description is, maybe like what the company's about. And that's like pretty much how it goes. So it's not, usually they're not like super technical, but it's always good to ask, just in case. And I know 30 minutes sounds like a lot, but when you're like stressed and like just talking, it goes by quick. So I promise you it'll go by
Yeah.
quick. And that's pretty much how it went. Like you do want to have your intro prepared. Like they are most likely gonna say, well, okay, like I'm this person, I'm an engineer, da da da. So tell me a little bit more about yourself. So write that question down because they're gonna ask you that 100%. It might not be that exact question, but in some shape or form, they're gonna ask you that. And
Yeah,
you cannot just
always.
say, "Hi, my name is Victoria. I'm looking for a job." Like, you know what I mean? Or like something like you have to have it together.
Yeah.
Um,
I would like, yeah, I know like usually you start like, oh, I'm depending on like what kind of position, like if it's an internship, co-op, or like full time, you're gonna say like what year you are, what you're studying, um, and you also wanna like, I would recommend like altering your description based on the position,
mhm,
right? Like, oh, I'm interested. Like if you're going for like, I don't know, like a systems or like communication type position, you want to say that, like
yeah.
emphasize that you took those classes and like what experience you have for that. I know for me, like I didn't take any internships during my time in college, so I emphasized my projects that I worked on. Um,
Mhm.
Obviously you can't like go into full detail about every single project you do to introduce yourself,
Yeah.
but just like mention it. And then um, also like if you want to be prepared that if they do ask about like your experience and your projects, that you have that information to back it up, like what specifically did you do on the project. You know, you obviously like work on a team. Most of the time you work on projects as a team. But you don't want to say like, oh, we did this and then we got like this award or this was our goal. You know, you want to emphasize what you did for the team, what your contribution was as well. I kind of like moved on about like from that introduction, but um, yeah, I would say like that question about like tell us about yourself. That's gonna come up, and also they're gonna ask you like why you're a good fit. At least for me, they did like why I'm a good fit for this position. And it's good to have like um, stuff to talk about yourself like in the back pocket or like write it down, and make sure you are confident about yourself. I know some of us it's hard to brag about ourselves sometimes, but if you're gonna do it in an interview. Like you kind of have to. Um, but yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, and like if you have ever worked, like if you're interviewing for a company and if you have ever used like some of their products, um, like on a project or something, um, that would be a good time to bring it up. Like say how you worked on a project using their products. Like they love that. So obviously because that's the company they're working for. Um, and
Yeah,
yeah, so I think that's pretty much like the basic stuff for like the 30-minute interview. Usually they'll tell you a little bit more about like the position, what it consists of, like, and then ask you if like you're okay with that. Um, you know, and
yeah,
they might give you a chance for questions. So I think in like the next interview or like the next two, kind of depends. So for the next one, it's obviously going to be a longer. I'm not going to say obviously because I did not know that. It is going to be a longer interview, most likely. Like probably like an hour maybe. Um, during COVID, they weren't in person, but they might be. Um, and this is either going to be like mostly behavioral or behavioral and technical. So just be prepared. You want to review like the basics, like at least for us, I had to review like op amps. They're most likely going to ask you about like a filter at some point. Solving for like voltage, current, making sure that you know those equations, power. And yeah, I think that's pretty much like the next one. And then it isn't until like probably the third one, they might ask you to like make a presentation about a project that you worked on. And then you're going to have like maybe multiple interviewers at that point ask you like questions about the project. They will get technical. So I would say like if you have a project that you like, but you don't necessarily know that much about, don't pick it. I'm sorry. Like it's not going to go well. That happened to me. So um sharing from my experience, it was very humbling. But yeah, I'm trying to think of other stuff, but if you have more, you can add.
Yeah. So I'd say for me, it was like one interview, but it was kind of a long interview. It was like maybe like an hour and a half, pushing it to 2 hours, I think. And it was because it kind of had, like it was about me. It was like behavioral questions, and then they asked me about my experience. So one thing is like when you go into um, behavioral type interviews, one common method that they use or like ask you about is like the STAR method. They don't ask you about this method, sorry, but they use it. Um, and what that is like situation, task, action, and result. So they'll ask you about like what you would do in like this situation or like how you would handle a situation. Maybe like when you're working on a team or on a project or something goes wrong, and that type of stuff. So, and you want to use that method to answer your questions. So, like what, make sure you like address the situation, like what is it? And then the task is like describe um what it is like that you have to do, like the purpose of it, and then like what you're gonna do to take action, and then like what the result is, like what the outcome is. Um, and a lot of times they'll ask you about like, I mentioned like they'll say like, what would you do in this situation? But they'll also ask you about like, tell us about a time when you had to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you have to start thinking of like, um, think back to like when you were on the team and you had to like address an issue that happened between like teammates, or the project went completely wrong, and what did you do to like make sure the outcome was still good,
Yeah.
or that you still can succeeded. So those are the type of things that you want to think about before going into your interviews. Like think about those situations and like your experiences, and use that to like your advantage. But yeah, and then also they did ask me about like my experience, like my projects that I worked on and like what I specifically did. And then um I think they also asked me if I had like certain experience with like some like software that they used. Um so like I know, for example, like 3D modeling, there's like so many different softwares out there that you can use, like CATIA or Fusion 360 and all that stuff. And they asked me if I had experience with CATIA, and then I was like, no. However, like I did do 3D modeling. Like I have experience just like with the different software. So it's like even if your answer is like no to some of like their experience that they ask you, Try to give them maybe like a time where you did have experience with something similar,
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah. Make sure you like put, if you have the experience, you have it, and tell them that. And, like if you don't, I don't recommend lying because then they'll be like, okay, tell us this then, right? And it's like, oh, uh,
But yeah, I think also like it doesn't necessarily have to be like technical experience. Like name a
yeah,
time that you missed a deadline. Like that was one of the questions. I mean, if they ask you like on a project, okay, be specific about a project, but or like how you overcame something, right? And for me, like I would talk about like my experience like being a leader in organizations and like um imposter syndrome, like because those are actual problems that I've had to face and like overcome. So don't think that like you have to go back to the same example all the time because eventually they they might ask you like, do you have a different example? And I know that because it happened to me. Okay, I got nervous and I kept using the same example. But um yeah, so
yeah.
that's what I
It could also be like a test, like maybe you thought you were doing good in your class and you do like super bad on this one, and then like everything's going downhill. It's like, hey, well, what did you do to change that?
yeah.
Like how can I make sure you succeeded? So it could be really simple. I know sometimes I tend to overthink and I'm like, oh, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. But like they just want to know like what kind of person you are and like that you'll be able to like you have the work ethic and you'll be able to work around things when stuff goes wrong. So especially in engineering, it's like so many problems. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Um yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people say that they like do lie and just like come up with like scenarios, which obviously you can, like no one's gonna stop you, but I mean, at least for me, I wouldn't want to end up in a company where I'm like faking it to make it because then like you're like interviewing for them and like not yourself, and then what if you just like end up hating it? Like I wouldn't want to be in that situation, but again, up to you.
Yeah.
I am not here to tell you what to do, just here to help.
Yeah.
Um,
We can go into like red flags probably. I feel like that was a good transition.
yeah, yeah. So red flags in the company. So I will use this example because it came up recently. Um, I won't name names or anything, but I have an example of someone who told me that they recently went on an interview and um they first had like to interview with like people who worked at the company, and then they had one with like a manager or something, like so a higher up, um and this person saw this higher up who he was going to interview with, they were going to interview with, messed it up there anyways, saw this like higher up like yelling at um his employees, like or like being like really mean to them, like why isn't this done, like and I was like, and to me it sounded so fake. I was like, that cannot be real, right? Like, but it is. Like there's actual managers out there who are so mean and like they want you to get work done 24/7, like work needs to be your life, and like so obviously that's a red flag. um and if you get a call back, I would hope that you're going on other interviews that you can rely on and just say like, "Oh, I'm no longer interested," or like, because like that's not gonna help you. Like you're gonna hate your life there. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, like your work environment is so important. Um, it will affect your mental health greatly,
Yeah.
for better or for worse. It will. Um, so, let's say even up to like the interview, like everything seems good. And then you get there, your first day, like your first like week, your first couple days, uh, it will feel like intimidating, at least for me it did. But let's say you're like couple months in and you still don't feel comfortable in your position, or like you're scared to speak up or talk about your ideas, you don't really feel like this is for you, I would say that's a red flag in itself. Like, you should be able to feel okay asking questions,
Yeah.
uh, and like talking to people, and like you shouldn't be afraid to speak up about, maybe like your ideas. So yeah, if you do, or like you just see things like going wrong, um, then I would say it's time to move on to
Yeah.
better things. And don't be afraid to change direction. I have not experienced this like in my job, but I know like in college when um, me and Victoria were just trying to do everything. Um, we were trying to dance, we were trying to be involved in like so many things. But like at one point you realize you can't do it all, and like when you feel like it's time to let go of something, so I would say to like take it and like do what's best for you.
Yeah, and I guess like relating that to the interview, like if you ask a question, for example, like what is this interview going to be about, or like what is the next interview going to consist of, like what are the next steps, and they get kind of like defensive telling you about like the content of the interview. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to tell you the questions. They're most likely not, so don't try to ask for the questions, but like at least like okay, this is going to be like a technical interview, we might like get familiar with the basics or something. At least they can give you something like how long it's going to be, like how many people you're interviewing with. But if they don't like tell you anything about that and they get like defensive about it, like, oh, we can't really say much, like that's kind of weird, So I would take that as like
Weird.
another red flag. Like obviously, if you want to go on the interview, like 100% do it. It's just interview practice, and I highly recommend doing as many as you can. But just like take a note on that.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And also make sure that, I know this is like about the interview, and we kind of talked about like once you're in the work environment, but even like their offers, when they give you like an offer letter, or they tell you what you're gonna be doing, or like what benefits you have, you also want to make sure that what they're offering you is good. Uh, you know, Especially like when you're going into like an entry level, don't expect like the absolute most, but also don't take the least.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that they're giving you what they should, and that the company values you, and they're not just like looking for someone to hire. So yeah, if you don't, for me, like I didn't know if they were offering me what they were offering me was good. So I asked someone who had experience in industry, and I would recommend doing that. And also doing your research like around the area. I think we mentioned this last time, but
Mhm.
like what the starting salaries look like. So um, definitely know your worth when you're going into this whole finding a job thing.
Yeah. And I think another thing um I experience is like just like interviewers being a little bit like passive aggressive, or like rushing you, or like I don't know, their tone of voice, I guess. Um those are things to look out for. Um like I remember I was like solving a question one time, and then like they just ended up answering for me, and I wasn't even taking that long. Like at least I didn't think I was, and so like I was gonna say it, and then the interviewer like just like, yeah, it's 8, and I was like, yeah, that's what I got, and I was like, okay, like, so I was like, this was like online, so I couldn't like, I don't know, so I'm glad it wasn't in person, but I don't know, those are other things to look out for. I'm telling you,
Yeah,
I've been through a lot, so if you need some advice, let me know. We did a whole 6
yeah.
months of it. um,
Also, if like you have any questions for like interview prep, Like I
Mm-hmm.
know I like did a lot of it. And then I like gave some tips to Victoria also when she was like starting hers. Um, more like the behavioral ones, because
Yeah.
obviously you don't really know what they're gonna answer in the technical one, but like, yeah, let us know. I definitely took a lot of notes before, during, and after the interview because I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah.
Yeah, I have different documents also. Like one of them is like I have one called op amp things. It's just like stuff about filters, op amps, like reviewing, and just like EE questions, like MOSFETs, gates, and even like the simple things like stuff about voltage, current, and stuff. So, and then I have other like documents that are like questions that came up for specific companies. And that's why I say like take notes during the interviews because then you can take those questions and study them for future interviews. Like they're most likely going to be like all pretty similar. Um, might be different applications or they might not ask you the question, but like you have that. And so, and then I had one for like just behavior questions. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And like if they ask you for like a presentation or something, like practice. And also practice mock interviews. Like those are important. My first one sucked. So 100%. And I'm just glad that I was able to do with someone who like wasn't there. Like she knew like I know like you're probably nervous, like I'm not here. Like this isn't an actual interview, like she's here to help. And so I know it can be intimidating and that's why I took the longest to go through them, but like trust me, you need to go through them
Yeah,
and
like mock
practice.
interviews are definitely important. I know like when I did one also, like it was bad at first, right? And I think initially like I wasn't even answering the question.
Yeah.
And then she was like, "All right, so this is what you said, and
Uh-huh.
this was a question." And she was like, um, "Can you tell me like where you addressed this part of the question?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, I didn't."
Yeah.
Um, and it was kind of like her way of telling me like to kind of think back, and not so much her telling me like, "Oh, you didn't answer the question." She like wanted me to realize it, and then see how I can go about fixing it.
Yeah.
Um, and then, even though I think I was like meeting with her, for like just some like questions. And then she was like, "So how do you feel about doing like a mock interview?" And then she was like, "I know you're probably gonna say like you're not ready, but like I'm gonna encourage you to do it." And I was like, "Okay." Fine, it's fine. But obviously, like you also want to make sure you do with someone who's like not gonna judge you, but help you, you know. And I knew she was there to help me. I was just like kind of scared, also. Like it was my first time, and I was like so nervous. But it's good to have someone who's like gonna like push you and like be there, but also tell you like, instead of answering it like this, maybe you want to answer it like this, So
Yeah.
definitely do them.
Because I think like even like her asking like where did you address the question? Like maybe Vanessa did think she answered the question and like she's like,
Yeah.
here's where I answered the question. But
Hmm.
then like obviously she was there to tell her like, that's not answering the question. Like if she
Yeah.
had said that, you know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
that's where like helping you understand like what to do, what not to do, because sometimes you may think that you are and like you're actually not, and that's where you gotta
Yeah.
learn. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I guess like in general, know the red flags in a company and know your worth. Um, do some practice before going into an interview. Find some common questions. Do some mock interviews. You want to be prepared, but also make sure that the company is a fit for you, as well as, even though they're evaluating you, you want to make sure the company is good.
Yeah.
So
And give yourself enough time. Like, if you need a lot of time to study and like you're doing a lot with classes, you're like, I don't know, even if you're after graduation, you still need more time. just pick a time that works for you. Like
Yeah, don't pick the next
tomorrow,
available
I'm
day.
ready.
Yeah, girl.
Yeah. Oh
You
no,
need
I
to be
wouldn't do that.
prepared mentally and all other aspects.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
that's pretty much what I had to say.
I feel like that was a lot of information. But
Yeah.
definitely if you have any follow-ups, feel free to reach out.
Mhm.
But yeah,
That was pretty much it. We hope that this conversation helped you a little bit,
yeah,
or at all, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Uh, yeah,
But
so
yeah, thanks for watching, for listening in. Um, our next episode is number 10, so we hope you stick around for that. Check out our website. This will be uploaded on our website, on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Also, our website, we uploaded some couple articles that we've been a part of recently, so check that out as well. And Victoria, take it away.
yeah, so on our website, we also have a Latingeniería tab. It will take you, well, there's pictures on that tab, but you can click on them and it'll take you to the Redbubble page for Latingeniería, and you can purchase merch, and all of the proceeds from that will go to supporting Latinas, minorities in engineering. So it will not be going to me, and it will be supporting others instead. Yeah, I actually did not make a design last month. It was a crazy month, and I will
That's
try to do better.
okay.
Yeah,
Your
but
best is enough.
yeah. And then this other time, it just Redbubble doesn't let you upload two-sided designs, so I'm trying to figure that out. But anyways, so just visit the site. If you have any ideas though, for designs, anything you want to see, feel free to reach out,
Yeah,
So yeah,
of course. But yeah, um,
that's
thanks.
it.
We don't have a closing, so
Thanks, I
we'll see
guess.
you. Yeah, we'll talk to you all next time.
Yes. Okay, have a
Okay.
good weekend, everyone.
Bye.